welcome to another up close video. Today's one is for Tonic Stamp Club number 20, which is called Honey Bears, and it's got some adorable little gorgeous, like they could be teddy bears, they could be grizzly bears. You could probably colour them to possibly be panda bears as well. I think maybe their arms and legs are a little bit too long than a normal like cartoony panda bear, but you could probably get away with colouring them to be any kind of bear that you want as well. And I reckon you could personalise them or characterise them into looking a little bit more like Winnie the Pooh as well, to go with like the honey and the honey pot kind of theme as well. You could easily use a black pen to draw a t-shirt on him and colour him in like yellowy kind of colours to make him look more like Winnie the Pooh as well. But I did actually colour all of mine like little brown grizzly bears, and I think they look really sweet coloured that way as well. So let's have a look at the stamp set first. So we have 4 main bears. You've got this gorgeous one who's sitting down and looks like he could be thinking about something, or he could be interacting with one of the other bears as well. He could be, he almost looks like he's looking at something, so he could be looking at the beehive or at a bee in front of him perhaps, or you can do all sorts of different scenes sort of building them up. And actually you have some musical notes, so maybe you could actually like draw his little mouth to be a little sort of black opened circle, and he could look like he's singing or whistling or something as well. So you could actually change him up a little bit and change his facial expression as well. So that's the first little bear that you've got who's sitting down. Then I think that this sitting down bear and the little baby bear go really nicely together, because it almost looks like this little one is looking up at this one, and you'll see I've used them together on one of my cards. So you've got the little tiny cute baby bear, but even though they're looking up, they don't have to be looking up at this bear. They could be looking up at this bear that's climbing the tree, or they could just be looking up at a bee as well, or the musical notes of someone singing, or a bird tweeting or something. Then you also have this bear, which is in a sort of weird position, because I'm presuming he is supposed to be either holding the honey pot or holding the beehive. And on the card where I've used him, I used him holding the beehive, and he's also got a stack of honey pots behind him as well, as if he's run out of honey, and he's gone for the straight in the beehive to get some honey out. So he can kind of be hugging either of those elements. And then talking of hugging as well, we've got this cute little character who is actually hugging the tree. And on the, I think I've used him 2 times, and on the main one where I used him, I took the beehive and put it about here, so it looks like he's just shimmied up the tree and he's trying to get the actual beehive as well. So there's loads of different ways to build a scene with these. And to hang the beehive on, you've got a short little branch here which has got a few little leaves on, so you can tie that green kind of colour across the card from having it on the leaves and maybe onto the honey pots, or if you've given him a t-shirt you could make it a green t-shirt as well, so you can really like match the colour across the card. But you do also get 2 silver birch trees in here as well that you could use horizontally as a branch coming across and add the beehive hanging off of that, or add extra branches using the little branch stamp as well and hiding them behind the trunk of the tree. So you can really play around with using these trees, whether it is vertically and doing like a whole background of them, just vertically and having a couple in the distance behind the bear climbing up this tree, or using them horizontally and having it as a place for the actual beehive to be there as well. Or you could even have like the little bear could be sitting on one of these, maybe up here. If you turn it this way, have the little bear sitting and then have the beehive down there or something. So you could do all sorts of different scenes with these. You've also got a little bush here as well with some little flowers on. So depending how you use this one, for example, with the bear hugging the tree trunk, you could put the bush at the bottom so that it hides where the tree doesn't go anywhere. Or you can use some of the separate dies from the die set to put him inside a circular frame as well. And you could even stamp lots of these and have loads of them at the top here and make it look like a really bushy tree as well. And you could fill up the top as well as the bottom if you wanted to, or you could even do some kind of little wreath just with these little bushes as well. So loads of different ways of using it. You could do a honey pot wreath as well, so you've got the lovely little honey pot there. and you could actually get away with stamping that top portion of that honey pot and then maybe drawing your own bottom to the pot as well to make it a larger pot of honey too, which would be quite a cool idea. Also, for kind of building up your scenes, you obviously have your little bee, and if you've had any of the other stamp clubs or, you know, designers' choices and bits and pieces like that, we've had probably the odd little stamped bee, and then we've had a few like die cut kind of bees as well that you could like bring into the foreground because they're usually on a larger scale, so you can combine any of those together. But we do have that gorgeous little bee that you can colour with the yellow stripes, which is nice. And then you also have these kind of like bees in the distance as well, or they could be flies for a different kind of card too, depending what kind of scene you're creating as well. And then for like backgrounds, you've also got some gorgeous little bear footprints as well, and I actually use these heat embossing them as like an emboss resist in a background as well, and ink blending over the top of them. But if you feel like you're maybe you've done more of like an abstracty kind of scene where you've just got your focal character in a circle, and you feel like your background's too empty, you can add a few of these little paw prints going across, so it doesn't actually have to be part of a scene, but it's just like filling in a little bit of the detail in the background and giving a little bit of subtle extra interest as well. Or you can actually place these to be like part of a scene as well. Maybe this little bear has sat down because he's been following the footprints. You could have the footprints coming out this way, and he could have been following them but got tired and sat down, and then there's still a trail of footprints in front of him. Or there could be footprints from behind him and then he's got tired and sat down. Or, you know, you can build up all sorts of different stories with these, which I think is really lovely. And you can combine them with other characters that we've had in previous stamp clubs as well, and even other beautiful images. Like we've had gorgeous floral images. You could bring the little bear into a load of florals as well. I'm sure we've had like a lovely frame that this could fit inside of, and have like a gorgeous tropical floral frame, and then have the little bear inside there with the little beehive hanging down as well. So you can do all sorts with these. And then my favourite thing, we have lots of like punny or cute sentiments that kind of go with the different designs in here as well, and make it more versatile for different occasions as well. So you've got big and bear, so you can do big bear, and then you've got hugs here as well. You've got you give the best big bear hugs, or just hugs, or bear hugs, depending on what you're using it for. You've got hello, thank you, I love you, and then you've also got, to go with thank you and I love you, you've got very much. So thank you very much, I think is a really sweet one. Then you've got you're sweeter than honey, and then you've also got baby, so you can do baby bear and have like the little bear, and it could be a new little arrival in the family as well. So you've got lots of different sentiments to kind of mix and match together, and I like the different fonts that you've got as well. But you could definitely mix these in with your dies that you have too. If you do have some of those stamp clubs that had those large words in there, you can definitely mix and match some of these together to create some different sentiments and stuff, and change the focus of it as well. Like for example, if you did have some of those big letters, you could have the big sentiment, you could have this one like dopily walking across the top of them, and then the little one sitting at the bottom of the letters as well. Or this one could be sitting on top of a large sentiment made from die cut letters as well. So loads of different ways of kind of putting these together. And even actually, if you did the branches or the trees coming in as branches, you could even have large letters sort of balanced on top of the branch as well, and then have the beehive coming down too. So loads of different ways of using this set. I've got, how many samples did I do in the end? I think I've got 6 samples to show you, and like an extra idea as well. But before I show you those, let's have a look at which dies coordinate with this. So you actually have a die that coordinates with every main kind of image, but the ones that you would use for more of like a background design, or for adding an extra little element, for example the little musical notes for Little Bear singing, so these 3 ones don't have coordinating dies because they would be used more for a background rather than wanting to die cut them out. And you also don't have dies for the sentiment, but you do have extra dies included in here as well. Some gorgeous honey drips, which I really love, and also a whole concentric nesting set that creates like a wood slice. You can definitely just use the wobbly circles in the centre individually just for like a wonky kind of circle, but I was finding using the outer two together gave you like the bark of the outside of a wood slice, and then using all of the interior ones but embossing them into the card then gave you like all of the rings of the age of the tree on the inside of the slice, and I'll show you that on my project as well. But I really enjoyed using those circles, and the largest one goes perfectly around this little bear on the tree so that you can really frame that into a design, and I've done a couple using that as well, and even one using a different, I was using him inside it as well, so you can definitely add little frames around these too. So let's go through and I will show you all of the coordinating ones just so you can see how they all coordinate perfectly. And again, Tonic have done the fantastic thing of you can stamp your images first and then die cut them, because you can see the whole image through the die, which is fantastic because it means you don't have to worry about messing up an image that you've spent ages colouring. So you've got the little bear hugging the tree, the bear sort of sitting down and thinking. You've got the bear that is kind of haphazardly walking or looking like he's gonna put his hand inside the beehive or inside the jar of honey. And you could actually have, if you had other elements, you could definitely have him holding other things as well, and maybe he could even be holding the little bear actually. You could definitely put other items in his arms too, and this could also go, I did actually use the hug sentiment with this one because he's hugging the tree, but you could definitely have him going to give someone a hug as well. Maybe he's staggering towards this one and he's going to give him a hug. So you can definitely create different stories with them, which is nice. So you get those three main bears. You get the little baby bear. You get the little bumblebee. You get the die for that as well. You've got a die that goes with the little bush, or that could be part of a tree if you wanted to build up a tree design. You've got the little honey pot. You have got the small little branch, you've got the beehive, and then finally you also have the two silver birch tree dies. Now for these ones, I would recommend when you're stamping them to either die cut first and then stamp them, because they are long stamps. You can actually bend them and they'll stay there because they're gorgeous high quality photopolymer stamps. But when you have a die that coordinates with them, sometimes I was finding it was a little bit difficult to get them to completely line up. One of them was lining up perfectly, and the other one I had like a larger bit of white up here and then a larger bit of white down here because I must have stamped it slightly wonky. So another way to get around that is to take your dies, die cut them first from scrap card, then place that aperture onto your piece of card you want to stamp onto, and then taking your stamps and lining them up inside the aperture that you've die cut the dies with, then you know that they're not going to be a little bit off. They're going to follow that actual like straight line of the die. So that's a top tip of how to get them to properly die cut out, but you don't have to use the dies with them. You can definitely just use them in the background, or they're such a simple shape to cut out as well, especially if you did want to curve them into a different kind of shape. They're really easy to cut out by hand as well. But to go with those actual tree dies, you do actually get 2 extra dies as well. So even if you don't want to use the stamped trees, you can have die cut trees, and then you've got this extra detail that actually cuts out in a whole block. I didn't actually use these in the end because I liked the stamped ones, but you can actually cut this extra detail and add it on top and really make it look like that silver birch kind of tree. I was thinking you could definitely cut this out of like the pearlescent silver cardstock that Tonic do, or even the pearlescent white as well, or even pearlescent white and use like a warm grey alcohol pen to colour it to give it that kind of warm grey silver birchy kind of a colour as well, or perhaps even vellum. I think maybe even like cutting the outside pieces from vellum and then using pearlescent card for these skinny little detail pieces would look really nice. And you have both of the ones that will coordinate with those ones. So not only do the outside dies cut the stamped images, you also have extra cutting dies to make them die cut trees if you'd rather as well. Then My two favourite dies off this set are these little wibbly drippy kind of dies. You probably, if you watch all my videos, you probably heard me say I really love the drippy die from that Tonic Craft kit that had the lollipops in, and it came out with the sweet sorbet colour trend. I really loved the drippy die that was on there. And then we had another drippy die on the ice cream that was in, I think it was a showcase, and it was like the little pop-up box. I think that's what it was on. Or it could have been a Stamp Club. No, well, maybe it was the Stamp Club actually, or maybe it was both of them. But anyway, there's been quite a few gorgeous like little drippy dies, and I really love these ones. They just give such a cool effect, and I think these with the monsters, if you got the Stamp Club that was the little monsters, you could make it look like kind of drippy slime or something, and then have the little monsters on there as well, and you can use them up whatever way you want to. And the good thing about them, if I get a piece of card, this is my usual kind of size, which is 4 by 5¼ inches. They've made them slightly wider, so you can actually cut them at a diagonal if you want to as well, to create even cooler kind of drippy effect. But you can then also layer them and they look a bit different. So you could cut one this way, and then you could move it down and cut another one this way, and you could even have this drippy one in the middle, and it gives a completely different kind of drippy look. Or you could also use these to create some kind of beach scene as well. Like this could be the actual sea waves, and you could have them going backwards. This could be like the white frothy stuff, and then you could have the sand as well, and you could create like a beach scene. So there's loads of different ways of using these gorgeous drippy dies, and you don't just have to cut them into a rectangle. You can cut them obviously off the corner and create like a triangular corner element. You can extend them and, you know, partly cut them and then line it up and cut the rest and do it from a longer piece of card or for a DL card, or you can just cut them into shapes as well. So you have this set of circle nesting dies, but you could take any nesting die that you have and you could create that drippy kind of effect on them. So for example, that one that was the Pot of Happiness, that's what it was called, the Showcase Pot of Happiness, and I made it look like planets. This kind of drippy thing, I had actually used the drippy sort of sauce from the ice cream on that one to make it look like a planet, but this is even more random and irregular, and it could look like some sort of cool planet as well. And you could even do stripy effects with these and repeat it all the way along. So I think this month's Stamp Club is worth it just for those drippy dies and this nesting set that creates this gorgeous like wood slice as well. I think it's definitely worth it just for them, but those bears are adorable as well. But not only do you get those fantastic drippy dies, you also get these two little dies, which are hearts, and they can actually layer together. But I'm thinking you could put this heart, I didn't actually do it in the end, I used the heart on a different card, but I'm thinking you could put that heart on the tree and kind of make it look like there's a whole aperture in the tree as well, and he could be looking up at that. Maybe there's something hiding in that little aperture rather than him looking at the actual beehive. There could be like a hole in the tree and he's looking at that. Or you can actually just use these as little jaggedy heart decorations, and you can actually cut the solid one and it will perfectly fit behind to fill in that aperture. So you can have two-toned kind of hearts with a different coloured outline to the interior as well. And these just go really nicely with that kind of woody kind of feel, because they're all jaggedy. They kind of look like something that could have been carved out of wood, or, you know, something like that. So I really enjoyed using those little hearts. And you can use the interior of that heart as well. You can use the outside frame and the interior too. And actually, I used this little heart multiple times across the background, originally to make a stencil to add heart stenciling to another project, but then I also ended up using the piece that I had made the stencil with as well. So just this little heart can make a really cool background for your bear designs as well. And then these extra dies are really cool too. We've got two beautiful branches. So if you don't want the stamped branch, you could actually just cut this beehive die out and have the beehive from the die cut branch, and not even have the stamp on the beehive either. You could draw that in by hand, you know, just sort of colour it in with a nice yellow, draw that little black oval in there, and maybe just do some, you know, sort of curved horizontal lines going across it to give it the look of that beehive, but you could have it all as a die cut card as well if you wanted to, and even have the die cut trees in the background and have these branches coming off the trees as well. So loads of different ways of kind of building this up. And I actually found the card that I was making, I really enjoyed using the hearts and these branches together just as solid elements to kind of give that faux embossing folder kind of look that I love to do as well. So you've got those beautiful elements. And then finally we have the fantastic little set of nesting circle dies. And you can see that largest one is a gorgeous size for a small size of card. But don't forget that you can definitely mount this up. You can make multiple wood slices and have them like layered up on maybe going down a DL card, or maybe 3 of them on a 5x7 card, or maybe 4 like quadrants on an 8x8 card as well. So you can definitely build up these kind of design too. But there is so much versatility in this little set because you can actually use the aperture as like a torn aperture kind of look. It has that kind of torn look to it. But I was finding if I combined this ruffly one, which is supposed to be like the bark outside, with one of the wonky interior ones, those two cut together give that perfect kind of like barky layer to the edge of you know, a wood slice that you might get to paint on or something, or even the end of a branch when the trees have been cut or something. It gives that gorgeous kind of a look. But you could also use this as maybe even adding another layer in as well as like a wooden tunnel. And if you have Disney fans in your life, you could find a little rabbit stamp. I don't know if we've had a rabbit stamp. There was a rabbit stamp, I'm remembering one now, in the Easter showcase from age, was it even a showcase? It might have just been an extra set. I'm sure there was a rabbit, and you could make it push a wheelbarrow. Having a rabbit in here, you could make it be like Thumper, or if you had a skunk as well from the Adorables from ages ago, you could have Flower and Thumper, and this could be like the wooden tunnel that they'd been going through. Or Fox and the Hound, you could have a fox and a dog as well, and have them going through a wooden tunnel rather than making it into a wood slice. But I was really enjoying turning it into a wood slice and just using all these interior dies, because you get, how many do you get? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 dies in this little nesting set. And I was using all these interior dies together, just embossing them into my card, using the green plate, the green squishy mat, and the white cutting plate. But depending on the thickness of card that you're using, you can swap out the white plate for the pink plate with the tangerine if you want to. And then if the pink plate's not giving enough pressure, you can add like a shim of cardstock or a shim of printer paper as well to get that like debossed design into the card, and I'll show you them on my sample. And then the way I was adding colour to this was I was using a light colour all over it once it was debossed, and then I was running my pens back round in a slightly darker colour into those debossed lines to make them stand out a little bit more, and then going back over with the lighter colour to sort of blend it all together. But having that darker colour into those debossed lines gives you that more like definition to it. And then for this one, having this as like the outer ring of the slice, I was colouring it all with the lighter kind of colour first, and then really darkening up that very edge, so it really looked like that was the very edge outside of the bark. You know, they've been around for years and years and years as the tree was growing. So I'll put all of these dies away, and then I'll come back to show you all of the samples that I've created. Okay, so this is the first card. Really simple, stamping those silver birches into the background and then stamping a couple of extra ones and raising them up just to add a little bit of depth. There was going to be 3 raised up, but I decided to use one in the background of another card and I was too lazy to stamp and colour another one. So I just added the 2 raised up instead, but I quite like the look of that actually. It's still quite nicely balanced really, having, because there's actually an odd number, I didn't realise that. So there is actually still an odd number of trees on there as well, and it's quite nice having them kind of layered, and because you have the dies to cut them out, you don't have to like do any masking and stuff and have any fussy cutting involved. As I said, on this tree I did have to trim off some of the white of it because I must not have put the stamp down exactly as it's supposed to go in the die, and it was like there was a thicker bit of white on one side and then a thicker bit of white on the other side, and I couldn't get the die to perfectly kind of line up to give the even white border that this one was giving. So definitely use that tip that I was saying earlier about getting them to line up nicely. And then for this one as well, because they're silver birch trees, well, that's what I decided to colour them as, because they're those lovely little skinny trees. I usually tend to think of them as the silver birch kind of tree. I coloured them with warm greys, and then I actually brought in some of the Snowstorm embellishment mousse, watered some down and just painted it up and down, and I also flicked some in the background so that when I then sort of watercoloured with some Aquaflows afterwards, it kind of resisted it a little bit, and gave almost a, well, I wasn't really going for a snowy effect, but you could definitely use these for Christmas cards actually. They'd work really nicely for a Christmas card, but I was more going for just that kind of ethereal, kind of bokeh-y sort of look in the background. It just breaks up having just a solid blue behind. But you could definitely go for darker colours and stuff and make it more of like a nighttime woodland, or a woodland that has like lots of coverage from the tops of the trees and stuff, and had more of like a moody effect to it. It would be great for autumn, this kind of layout, or as I said before, Christmas would work really, really nicely with all of these like silver birch trees as well. And then I just decided to add that adorable little bear that's just sitting there kind of thinking, staring off into the distance. And then I did the I love you very much for this one. So really, really simple little card. Then the next one is a little bit more kind of in depth. There's more elements on this. I really wanted to use that drippy dye, but I wanted to use it in a different way, so it's not just like a drip of honey coming down your card. I just decided to use it white on white and raised it up on 3D foam so you can see it better because it's casting a shadow. And I also went along the edge with a little bit of aqua shimmer as well to make it really nice and sparkly just along that edge so that it stands out nicely too. And the actual main panel is the waste piece from me cutting out one of these sort of log pieces to use on a different card. And then I had this sitting on my desk and I was like, oh, why don't I just frame this gorgeous little bear inside the circle as well? And so this one is different from the other, I think I did two more, yeah, from the other two that I'll show you later, because I coloured the dark onto the outside aperture. And then I took another piece of card and cut the next die down from another piece of card. So they're actually two pieces layered on top of each other. And the bottom one's coloured lighter, and the top one I just did the dark right on the edge of it. So it's a slightly different way of doing it from the other two that I'll show you. And I did this one more as like an aperture, and then he's got like the summertime sky behind him, and then he looks like he has just stolen that beehive and is running off because he's run out of honey from all of his little pots that he had around as well. And then there's loads of little bees everywhere with the tiny little bees stamped there as well. And that stamp is actually very easy to just selectively ink as well. So this, I selectively inked it just so I had the 3 bees up here, or here I inked it up again to get a couple of extra little tiny bees on here and just stamped the 1 little bee. So you can definitely play around with how many little bees you stamp at a time with that one. I did the hello honey as the sentiment because I thought it's hello and then honey for a pot of honey, but you can also do it as, you know, a greeting to somebody as well. And I just thought it's a cute little kind of layout for a card, something kind of a little bit different, because you're not having like a complete scene, you're just kind of seeing that little scene through the aperture. And this was the other card that I wanted that birch tree to go in the background, so that's actually just 1 tree, but I put it right the way up to the top here, trimmed off the bottom, and then used the bottom bit over there, so you can actually get away with stamping out less trees if you're putting them in an aperture as well, because you can actually make the most of the height for a longer one and then use that short extra piece near the side as well. So that works out really nicely. So that's that card. Then this card is again using that gorgeous little bear, but I thought the little one just looks like he's looking up at that one, so I had to use those two together. And I did thank you very much as the sentiment. For the background of this one, I was doing that embossed resist technique with the little paw prints. However, when I was ink blending, I did that annoying thing where you press too hard and then you crease the card because you're not paying attention. So I deliberately creased it up even more. So I've now got this like creased texture all all over it. I just creased it in the same direction that I'd accidentally creased it in, and I just added a couple of colours of green ink, and then I actually did direct to paper and dragged my ink pad across for the brown as well to get that brown tone. But then I felt like it was still a bit too empty, so this is when I took that little heart die and I created a stencil this was just going to be a stencil, which I then inked through to get the hearts on this card, and I felt like the colour wasn't as strong as I wanted it to be, so I just doodled with a black pen around them to make it stand out. But then I saved the stencil, and I'll show you that on the next card in a second as well. But I just did for this one the thank you very much, and I mixed the two sentiment types together, so you've got the different fonts in there, and I just did them on a scrap of card. So I like to cut down A4 card into 4 of my little panels that I love using, and I'm always left with this strip of card, and I don't like to throw it away because you can use it for sentiments and stuff, and it's often like the perfect little width for adding a little piece like this. It kind of grounds your characters, but it's also a place for adding the sentiment. And just to make it look a little bit more intentional, I just added those little black faux stitching lines on there as well to kind of go with the doodling that I did around the hearts. And I've just got the 2 little characters there, and all of my colouring for the bears I just did with alcohol pens, but I was definitely thinking Tonic's coloured pencils, you know, the classic coloured pencil. They've brought out loads of different colours in them now. I was doing my swatches the other day, and I could have come in with any of the brown tones from these and added extra. Oh, these ones haven't got as many brown tones. Those are the new ones, by the way. If you haven't got the 3 newest sets of them, I treated myself to them and I was swatching them out. But any of these kind of brown tones, you could definitely bring in these on top of your alcohol pen colouring to add a really cool fur texture to them as well. But they also look brilliant just solidly coloured too, without the fur texture, or you could go in with your Aquaflows and get a different kind of texture with those as well. So you can colour them however you like. So that is that one. And then you can see, if I hold these 2 together, you can see the hearts are in the exact same place across the 2 backgrounds, because this was the stencil that I used to ink these, and all I did was then just come back with this. You can see there's darker areas around the hearts because I took the darker green ink and I ink blended onto that one. So then I just took a lighter green ink to kind of blend out the harshness of those, and then I used Big Bear and Hugs together to stamp in the background. I also thought it looked a little bit too empty just with the Big Bear Hugs, because I didn't want to overwhelm it with stamping that all over it, so there was still extra areas, so I did just use a white gel pen to add the hearts in. I'm actually amazed that it didn't go green, because I used oxides underneath, and I would have thought that the white gel pen would have gone green, but it stayed nice and white, which is nice. And then for the main focal point on this one, I did the technique I was telling you about of cutting the 2 outside ones together and adding that extra darkness right on the very edge to really look like the bark. And then I actually did just take the interior piece that fell out of that, the white card that fell out of that, took all the rest of those dies and did the embossing into that piece. So because I raised the outside up on 3D foam, you can kind of see it here that they were just the one piece. But you could definitely take the largest outside die and deboss the other ones into it and do it that way if you'd rather as well, if you'd rather not see the seam. Or maybe if you're sticking it flat you wouldn't really notice as much either. But I quite liked having that little wood slice in the background, so again it kind of makes it, rather than having to actually have like a full scene on your card like this one where you've got like the full trees, and you could have gone to town and added grass along the bottom, a sunshine poking out from behind the trees and stuff. Just using that like little wood slice, you're just making more of like a topper to go on your card, which is nice. So and then I've just added that gorgeous little bear hugging the tree in the centre of that as well, and he cuts out so nicely with the die as well, and it works so nicely just to go inside the centre of that circle. And he does look really lovely more over to the left hand side, so his like ears are hanging over the edge of the circle as well, so you can definitely place this wherever you want to, depending on what sentiment you're putting on the card, where you want the sentiment to be. Do you want the sentiment to be in the circle with him? Do you want the actual like topper to be in the centre of the card, or do you want it off to one side and you trim a bit off? Are you using it on a square card? You know, there's loads of different ways of like playing around with the placement of stuff as well that will make it look a little bit different too. But I really love that effect of like the wood slice behind, and it's so such a clever idea of them giving you that little nested set inside the die set, that you can actually create this kind of effect with too. And actually doing something like that, I'm thinking ahead to Christmas again, because I've been making Christmas cards recently. I've got Christmas on the brain. But thinking ahead to Christmas, you could create things like this. Maybe you have a tree that's branches aren't very strong, whether it's a real tree or an artificial tree, and it can't hold up wood slices very well. You could make faux wood slices and even do this on both sides and have them double-sided wood slices, and add other characters that you might have as well. Bears go really nicely for Christmas, but there's loads of other characters that we've had that you could turn into more like little Christmas characters as well. Like the penguin and the snowman and stuff. So yeah, you could definitely use them for Christmas decorations on your tree too. That would be a nice way of using them. And then for this one I did "You Give the Best Hugs" because he's hugging the tree, and I haven't even used anything to do with the honey on this card, so it's literally just like a hugs kind of a card. Then this one is the same kind of idea as this one, but sort of adapting it a little bit more and using this tree so it looks like it's one of these trees that the bear's hugging, but in the distance. Rather than making it a silver birch tree, I've made it more of like, I don't know, an oak tree, an apple tree, whatever tree this is that, or wherever a bee would put their hive. I'm not sure what kind of trees they prefer actually. But yeah, whatever kind of tree you've made the bear hug, I've done it for the skinny trees as well. And then I've put them so it looks more like they're in the distance. So it looks like it's some kind of forest where the tree is situated as well. And then this one, I've really made it so it looks like he's looking at the beehive. That's how I imagined, like that's what I would think when I look at this little character. He kind of looks like he is looking just to this area, so adding that little beehive there works perfectly. But you've probably got other stamps in your stash. This could be a big butterfly that's landed on the tree as well. It doesn't have to be the beehive and honey themed or anything. Then I've also used two of the little stamped, and I've die cut them out, little branches, and because it wasn't quite long enough I wanted the circle to be in the centre of the card, and because I made the branch come out of the circle it wasn't quite long enough, so I just cut the second one and overlapped it over that end piece, and that little leaf there really helps kind of hide the join, and you can't really tell that the branch isn't long enough. It looks like it's supposed to be like that. And then I've got the three little bees there. I've done little white faux stitching in the background to make it look like little bee trails. I've also stamped the word honey in the background with a coordinating colour of ink that I've inked the background with, and I've done "You're sweeter than honey" as my sentiment. And in the background I actually, this is Salvage Patina, Mermaid Lagoon, and then this one was a mixture of the two in oxide inks, and I inked them so it kind of gives an ombre effect that was split with the wiggly die. So one of the straighter wiggly die, I cut it twice into here, and then I coloured each section separately. So this is just Salvage Patina, this is the mixture, and then this is just the Mermaid Lagoon, and I've stamped over the top in coordinating colours with the little honey word on there as well. So that's how that one is kind of turned out. But you could definitely make the background more striking with different colours. You could have the top one as honey dripping down, then the middle one could be sky, and then the bottom one could be grass dripping upwards as well. You know, you can really have a play with it, or cut this loads of times into a background. Maybe try and cut it in a similar place on different pieces of card, or cut multiple colours of card into rectangles larger than you want, cut the dribbles into them, mix and match them all together, and then trim them down to the size that you want, and you'd get multiple backgrounds all in multicolours, if that makes any sense, just from using that sort of one die multiple times on them. I think that would look really lovely. But then after doing those 5 cards, I also wanted to do a card without using the bear or the bees or anything. And I decided just to do this little one, mixing in some of the same colours that I'd been using on the backgrounds of the other ones. And this is just using those gorgeous 2 branch dies and the 2 heart dies as well, and just creating an overall background. And to begin with, I was thinking of just leaving it white on white because I think it would make a really lovely wedding card like that. but often when I have these ideas I do leave them white on white, so I thought I would, because I had all the inks out and so that it matched nicely with all the others, I did actually do lots of ink blending over the top and came back in with a bit of brown ink as well to kind of deepen it up, make it a little bit vintagey looking. And then I've just used the thank you sentiment on there, and to tie the white of the sentiment and the white of the card blank in, I've just done some extra doodling with a white gel pen to kind of add that lightness across the rest of the card as well, and it just gives a really lovely effect. And I also kept the waist piece because I thought maybe if I had thought about it more and placed these in more of an aesthetically pleasing kind of layout, you could definitely use the waist piece from these branches. They do look really lovely, just like that. Or you could do that technique that I have shown so much recently that I love doing, cutting them into a random quadrilateral kind of shape around them, especially this tall kind of branch. You could just have 3 of them, simple, cut out of different colours onto a card with a thank you sentiment, and it would make a beautiful, really simple card. Or even just using the actual positive die cuts as well, not even using the negative and cutting around them. So I think this is a really lovely, versatile stamp club. So I hope you enjoyed this up close video looking at Tonic Stamp Club number 20, which is the Honey Bears stamp and die set. And if you're interested in getting hold of this month's stamp club, there will be affiliate links in the description box below the video, and I'll try and link to as many of the other bits and pieces that I've mentioned or that I've used as well, some of the oxide inks that I've used and stuff, so you can get an idea on what kind of colours I was working with as well. So I really hope you've enjoyed the video and got a few ideas from it as well. Maybe go and jot them down so you don't forget before your set arrives to you. But yeah, I hope you've enjoyed the inspiration and me explaining how I've done like the wood slices and stuff, and having the backgrounds and using a little bit of just stamping straight onto the background, or stamping and die cutting and adding it on top, just using the die cuts and ink blending over the top. And actually do let me know, have you been missing the sped up videos where I've been doing the sped up ones showing you how I made the card? Because I stopped doing them for last month, which was March. I don't think I did any of them in March actually, I don't know, I can't remember when I stopped doing them now, but it's been a few launches that I haven't done them in and nobody said anything, so I'm just wondering if anybody is actually missing them, or whether you don't mind me not doing those sped up videos anymore. It was supposed to leave me more time to do other sped up videos, but then I still haven't done many other sped up videos, so I just wanted your feedback to know if you were missing them or not. So do leave a comment below the video if you've been missing them, or even if you haven't been missing them as well. So yeah, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you again in the next video. Bye!